Hello, Math3430. This is the first video on communicating with the outside world. We'll get some user input and we'll write and read files. Okay, so for user input, there's a simple way of doing it. This is crude. The uncrude way would be to get the graphical user interface toolkit for your computer and do a dialog box, or maybe a web application, but we don't want to get into that, so we'll just stick with this simple way. So if you want to get some user input, use the function called input. So let's say S for string is input, and then this is a string. Let's just say type something, colon space. Okay, you execute that statement, it gives the prompt to the user types something, and then that's the string S, the value of the input command. So you can get what you need there. Notice the thing returned by input is always a string, so if you want numbers or something like that, you have to parse it yourself. So for example, if you want a number, let's say S is input, let's say an integer. Type an integer, type a integer, colon, space. So I type 456, and S is 456. So to convert it to an integer, I would say int of S. And as we can read in the help box here, int is convert the number of string to an integer or return 0 if no arguments are given. So it'll convert strings to integers. Of course, there's an error if the format is not correct. Okay, so that's basically all I want to say about getting things from the user, but that's very handy. Get something you can type at the command line. Okay, well, let's try reading and writing a file. So I have a little short file over here. It looks like it's displayed over here. It's called sortfile.txt, TXT. Forget the sort, just we're not sorting. And let's see if we can read that, open that and read that with a program. So let's see. Let me get a new file and let me open that file and read it. Okay, well, so you have to open a file. So basically the routine is you open the file, you do the input, you close the file. And there are various reasons why it's important to close the file. And so somebody thought, well, let's make sure that the file gets closed, especially if there's an error. So they invented context managers. So a context manager looked like this, with that starts the context manager. And then to open a file, I do open. This is a text file, so I put in the name of the file, which was sortfile.txt. This is, since I didn't give a whole path there, that is in my working directory. If it's not in your working directory, you'll have to type the whole path or some sensible path. So I won't get into that at this moment. And then we give the mode, which is basically what we're going to do with the file. In this case, we're going to read it. So we're not going to change it, can't change it. And then we need a name for the file, if you refer to it in the program as, let's say, infile. The file handle infile. Okay, so they're basically, so the point of the context manager is I'm in an indented block. If I leave that block, go out an indentation, I'll leave the context manager. As soon as I leave the context manager, it'll close the file. Okay, so you basically have three commands for reading a text file: read, read lines, and read line. So let's see what happens. So we can do infile, let's set it equal to something, s equals infile dot read. And let's go over here, run it, and let's go over here. What's S? Well, that's the contents of the file. Notice the new line characters at the end of the lines, and the screen, they display as separate lines. Okay, so it zoops the whole thing in one go and makes it a whole string. Of course, if you have the Encyclopedia Britannica, that's probably not a good idea. It may run out of memory. That's your problem. You'll have to try and figure out something. So somewhat similar in that regard is read lines. Say L equals infile dot read lines. And I don't want to have this command. Let's comment it out. Okay, so now I'm going to read lines instead of reading the whole thing, so execute it. And L over here is a list, and the elements of the list are one line per item. So that's not too bad for processing it, but again, you have the same difficulty with memory. So the most memory economical way is to read it one line at a time. So let's comment this line out. And let's read a line. So let's say line equals, doesn't matter what you call it, of course, infile dot read line. Okay, so what's line? Well, that's the first line of my file. If I call read line again, I'll get the second line and so on. And lines are distinguished by this new line character. So how do I know when I hit the end of the file? Well, Python makes sure that there's a new line character at the end of the file. If people type something on the editor, they save it without hitting return. There might not be one there, but if it's not, they add it. And so when you read the last line, you eat up the new line character and there's nothing left. The file is nothing left to read. So when you read it with read line, you get an empty string. So the empty string signals end of file. So if you want to read it a line at a time, you can go around a loop, reading one line at a time until you get an empty line. So I'm not going to do that. There's a built-in mechanism to make that easier. Always depend on Python people to figure out something easier, if not more clear. So let's do for line in infile. That'll read it a line at a time. And go around the loop and give me line will be the first line, second line, third line until I hit the last line. and then the for loop will stop. Okay, so let's just print it to the console line and proceed. What happens? Well, in file, yes, in file, file. Okay, try again. Okay, there's double lines there. Why is that? Well, of course, that's because there's an end of line in each line in the file, which stays there, and then print adds a new line. So a way to get rid of the new line in the input lines is line equals line dot strip. Remember, strip deletes leading and trailing white space characters, including the new line. If it's at the back, you can give it an argument to do deletion of other characters, but by default it just strips off the leading and following blank space. So let's hit return. Let's run the file and see what happens. Okay, so there's the file line per line. Okay, well, I might want to decide I want to write that to another file. Kind of silly, but let's do that. So how can we modify that? Well, I need an out file. How can I create a context manager for two files? Well, it's easy. It's just comma, out file, open. Let's call it scratch. .txt, and the mode, I'll say write. W. Okay, with mode W, it'll delete the file if the existing file and create a new one. You can look up at the documentation for open, of course, to see what the various values of this W character are. You can append to an existing file. You can switch things around, read and write an existing file with the same file handle and so on. So you have to read that, and then I have to tell it the file handle name as out file. Okay, so when this context manager when we leave the context manager, it will close both files. Okay, so in here, let's replace this print line by out file dot write, and that just writes a string. So I can say line, but I stripped the line, so I should either not strip it or let me add a new line character. And away we go. Okay, what happened? Well, we have to see what happened to the scratch file.scratch. So let's do open scratch file. There it is. Okay, so that's just the lines from the input file copied to the lines from the output file. Well, I thought it would be helpful to do an application. So I was going to do an application. I thought of giving it as a homework assignment, but I realized that there were some subtleties to it. So it'd be better to do it as an example. I'll give you a homework assignment in a little bit. And all right, let's go back to my file. Or let's create a new file. Okay, so the problem is take a count of the words for the words in the file. So we want to count how many times hello occurs, how many times world occurs, and so on. So that's a job for a dictionary. We can make the keys, the words, and we can make the value for that key being the number of times it's appeared. So we just go through the file and update those counts every time we come to a word. Well, the first question is, we have to be able to read it, though, to separate it. So we need to separate it into words. So we need to get rid of the punctuation. Let's see if we can figure out how to do that. Well, it's not too hard to write. So let's write a function to do that. Let me first import string. Why do I do that? Well, there's over here, if we import string, there's a string in here called string.punctuation, which is the official list of what the punctuation characters are. So we want to get rid of those, if any, occur in the file. So notice there's one little subtlety here of backslashing of some of this stuff to get it to work. Okay, so I'm going to use that as my official punctuation. So let's do define, remove punctuation from a string. Well, basically the idea is easy. You just take one character at a time. If it's a non-punctuation character, pass it to the output. If it's a punctuation character, do nothing. Don't pass it to the output. So let's create a new string, of course, because strings are immutable. And let's start that at being the empty string. And then we'll do for character in S, if C not in string dot punctuation, then you add it to the new string. So new string equals new string plus C, shorter, you can type plus equals C. Okay, and then at the end of this, we want to return the new string. Okay, so that ought to do it. Remove the punctuation. Let's see. Okay, well, let's see. How about S is hello world. Hi, in parentheses, by, in brackets. Okay, so let's see if we can remove all that punctuation. Name world is not defined. That's because I didn't quote the string properly. I wanted that back here. Okay, so let's run this file to make sure we've got that function. And then let's do remove punctuation. Punctuation. Punct of S. So it removed all the punctuation. Okay, the other thing to worry about is that when you read this, you want to get rid of the capitalization on the words, because you want to count hello twice if you have capital H hello and little h hello, or at least that's the most common way of doing it, I would think. So to get rid of that, there's a string method called fold case. So we'll use that to try. That's its purpose, to allow comparisons that are not case sensitive. Basically, it just converts it to lowercase, but there are some subtleties, especially for non-English languages. So let's use fold case, sorry. And so let's try opening this and seeing what we've got and reading it in. So let's start with an empty dictionary. We start our context manager, open, what do they call it, sort file .txt, and the mode is read. Okay, and then as I would like to call it, in file. Okay, now we're going to loop over the line, so we do for line in file. So what do? Well, let's strip it. So we don't have to, we'll put in our own new line characters. And then let's fold the case. Fold case. Case fold. Yeah, the help window there gave it to me. So we fold the case, and then let's remove the punctuation. Remove line. Okay, at that point, it's pretty bare words separated by spaces. So we just want to cut the string into words by cutting at the spaces. And the thing that does that is, call it words, is the string method split lines dot split line dot split. So over here, if I have, call it S is A, B, all right, let's just do this. It's a string A, B, C, comma, a bunch of spaces. Then what happens if I say strip? Not strip, split. Okay, it makes a list of the strings that were separated by the spaces. Notice it preserves the punctuation marks. So I wanted to get rid of the punctuation before I split it. Okay, so that's the words on the line. So we want to add those words to the dictionary, and we've done this before. So what I want to say is for word W in words, add the dictionary. So let's call the dictionary counts rather than count. So let's do counts of W equals, well, the trick we saw before was counts dot set default W0 plus 1. Okay, that saves me an if statement. Basically what it does is if W is in the dictionary, then set default looks up the value for that key and returns it as the value of this expression. We add 1, count one more word, and we set counts W to that. What if W does not exist? Well, then we hit this first and set default. If W is not a key in the dictionary, it makes it a key in the dictionary. The value is 0, and it returns 0. So we now have a new blank entry in the dictionary. We put a 1 in it because we saw the word for the first time. So that's pretty easy. And then that's it. So we should have the count in the dictionary. All right, let's see what that is. Let's get out of the context manager and do print counts just to see what we got. Okay, let's try. Okay, so it's a dictionary, and it's got hello once, he and said twice, all the rest of them 1. I think if you look at the file, where is it? Sort file. So hello occurs once, he occurs twice, here and here, and said occurs twice, here and here. Okay, and the rest of them occur once. Okay, well, we need a more useful format for the output instead of just printing the dictionary. Where are we? Untitled 4. Okay, so let's create an out file and try and write this in there at some useful way of printing. So I could say at this point the in file is closed, so let's open the in out file. Open what should we call it? Counts.txt, and then the mode will be as we did last time. The mode is write. I'm going to put a little more white vertical space there. As in file, out file. So we want to loop through the dictionary keys, and for each dictionary key that's a word, we want to print out the values. So you could say something like, oh, I don't know, how about for KV in counts dot items, we've done before. Do a loop. So let's do with print just before we write the out file. So what happens if we print counts of K, comma V. Well, sorry. K is the key, comma V is the value. Okay, run it. And, well, okay, that's not so good. It put in a space for us, but it would be nice if the numbers didn't go back and forth like that. It would be nice if they lined up in a column. So what we need is formatted output. So we need to give it instructions to format like that. So let's say outline is, well, the formatted string. So there's basically two decent ways to format something in Python. You can use the format function, or you can use what's called an F string, a formatted string. So you go F, and you type what you want, but you have to leave spaces to substitute things in. So let's do the first substitution. There in curly braces is K. And we have to tell it to justify it and to put it in and pad the column. So let's put it in left justification against the left margin. And you know, how long are our words going to be? That could be a problem. Let's use 10 spaces. And then the second field is for V, and that should be right justified. Right justification is the right thing for numbers. So we right justify it, and let's make a space for, say, 8 spaces for it. And I'm not going to, I could put a new line there, but I'm not going to. So then let's write to outfile. So, sorry, wrong programming language. Outfile dot write. Okay, outfile dot write. So outline plus a new line. As I said, you could put that in your formatted string, but not put everything together. Okay, let's see if it works. Sign not allowed in output string. Now I really have no idea what they're talking about. And it's difficult to say. Let me retype this and see if it works. So it's quoted. I want to do K, left justified in 10, and then another substitution. Let's substitute V in right justified in 8. Okay, I'm going to ask you to be patient while I look at my notes just to make sure that I'm doing that correctly. So I've got my tablet computer here and I have to look at it. That apparently looks right. So let's put this here. And let's save the file. And let's run it. Hold your hat on. You got me what happened there. I added some spaces, but I don't know. Apparently that looks like that was the solution. You had to put spaces in there. Okay, I'm glad we solved that without too much trouble. So we should have our out file, which was called counts. It should be here someplace. There it is. Counts. Okay, lines up nicely. Okay, so here's some food for thought. We'll do it next time in the next video. Those words are not in alphabetical order. How could I make them in alphabetical order down the column with this what I've set up? I have to modify the program a bit. So I'll let you think about that for next time. And I'm going to sign off now. And there'll be another video where we pick up with the problem I just gave you. So signing out.